will collect it at the end. And he finishes the introduction and japa. Okay? Okay, Shanta, it's all yours.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Before we begin, I'll recite some invocation mantras. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Radati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome all of you to this session on japa. Japa, loosely translated, simply means sound meditation. It's the recitation of sound vibration. And when we speak about mantra meditation, man means mind, and tra comes from the word trayate, which means to become free of. So mantra is that sound vibration which frees the mind. Now, sometimes we may think that this mantra meditation or sound meditation is something exclusive to practitioners of the Vedic culture, but actually it isn't. If we see that even in the Catholic faith, there's something like mantra meditation, which is chanting on rosary beads. The Islamic faith, they also have prayer beads that they also chant on, which is different from the rosary bead. I think there are 100 beads in that and a center bead. The rosary is made up differently with different points representing the stations of the cross, and there's 10 beads in between. And even if there isn't any specific meditation on beads, the chanting of sacred sound is something which pervades our culture. There's oftentimes the singing of religious songs glorifying God, and music itself, it permeates our culture. It sets our mood. It can make us feel sad. It can make us feel a sense of adventure. It can calm us down. It can take us to a faraway place just by the power of sound. So sound itself has a very, very deep impact on consciousness. Oftentimes, when persons can't sleep, they have, white noise machines or white noise generators where there's soothing sound of flowing water or nature sounds, with the idea of calming the mind and taking us to a very peaceful place where we can be rested. So in spiritual practices, sound also plays a very important part. And I highlighted, for example, the Catholic faith, the Islamic faith, and so on. In the Vedic culture, the chanting of mantras, either musically or in the form of japa, which will be the focus of our attention this morning, is of primary importance. In fact, it's like a foundational principle, the chanting of mantras. And the Vedic culture is very wide. and there are many different types of practitioners in it. There are the Shaktas, who have generally chant their mantras on beads made of rosewood. You have the Shaivites, who generally chant mantras made of Rudraksha beads. And you have the Vaishnavas, who generally chant their mantras made on beads of Tulasi. And of course, there are other materials which beads can be made of, like neem wood, sometimes glass. Some beads are made of metal, and even sometimes I've seen people using modern day counting devices like clickers, just for convenience, perhaps of not having their beads or other apparatus out in the public. Now, what is the significance of mantra chanting? One of the main significances of mantra chanting is that it takes us above the material realm. It sort of lifts us above, just like when most of you may have come to Tobago via plane and or may have traveled on a plane before. And sometimes when we're on the land, everything seems very chaotic. We may be in a city perhaps, and we say, look at this place, it's like a dump. Or even look at this place, it's very beautiful. Or walking and we think that this country is going through so much turmoil, there's so much crime. But somehow, as soon as I've had this experience, I don't know if you have had this experience also. As soon as the plane begins to lift off, and the higher the plane goes, what I find for myself is that my perspective on the situation changes. The same place which I felt was looking terrible, which was infested with so many problems that were affecting me, I find the place takes on a different appearance almost. It looks even beautiful. Things that I would have not been able to perceive when I was on the ground, I'm able to perceive more clearly. I'm able to see it from a different perspective, from a higher perspective, one might say. So one of the immediate effects of chanting of mantras is it increases or elevates our perspective. It elevates our perspective. And that is what I would consider to be the secondary effect of the chanting of sacred sound. The primary effect is that it puts us or gives us access to a realm of complete divinity. It gives us access, another way to say it, directly to God. Exactly said in the scriptures that Namnamakari Bahudha Nija Sarva Shaktis. That the name of God is not different from God, and therefore the name of God is as unlimited and unlimitedly powerful just as God himself, because it is completely spiritual. There's another verse that says, Atha Sri Krishna Namachintamani Krishna, rather. Namachintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shudho Nitya Mukto Abhinatvat Naminaha. That the name of God, Namachintamani, it is completely spiritual. It is not something that is materially constructed. It has a completely transcendental and spiritual nature. Namachintamani. It is Chaitanya. It is fully conscious. Rasa Vigraha. And within the name of God, one can experience every taste. Or one can get, to say it another way, unlimited spiritual experiences. It is completely pure. It is not contaminated by anything material. And it is not bound by the trappings of the material world. It is completely liberated, and it is completely liberating when we come in contact with it. So this is the nature. Why is that so? Because abhinatvat namanaminaha. There's no difference between God the person and God the name. And a very loose example to illustrate this, even for someone who doesn't have any clear idea of who God is or what God is, that sometimes in great distress, they may cry out, "Oh God," just in some, universal kind of way. "Oh God, oh my God," and they feel some sense of relief. I actually had that experience. I was dealing with one person just the other day, and they kept saying, "Oh God," like not really a religious person or anything like that. I said, "Well, why are you saying that?" I said, "Somehow I get relief. Somehow I get relief, whether mental or otherwise." But the point is, by calling out to some higher power, we get some relief. And one of the ways that we can get that connection is said in another verse, that Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahya mindriyai Sivan mukehi jihwado swayameva spuratyada. That because the name of the Lord, which I've just described, is completely spiritual, we cannot grasp it, therefore, with our materially dull senses. Our senses, the very nature of our senses is that they're imperfect. For example, even sound, that we can hear only within a certain frequency. Beneath a certain frequency, we can't hear because it's very low frequency. It's subsonic in one sense. Beyond a certain frequency, we also can't perceive it. We also can't perceive it. Therefore, we can only function within a certain bandwidth. Even our vision only functions within a certain bandwidth. If something is too close, then the eye isn't able to focus. If something goes beyond a certain distance, similarly, we can't see it. So therefore, even materially, our senses are unable to grasp material things, and what to speak of spiritual things. And even though we may be able to say the name of God with our tongue, it doesn't have the complete spiritual effect until our senses become purified, until our consciousness becomes elevated. So then the question one might ask is, so how do we raise our consciousness? How do we elevate our consciousness? How do we improve the receptivity of our senses, that we may be able to actually come in contact with the pure spiritual sound? And that answer is very simple. It's through the medium of spiritual sound itself. Therefore, the verse continues to say that even though our senses cannot grasp something which is completely transcendental, something completely spiritual, then through the means of what we have, which is our mouth and our tongue, there are two things we can do to be able to grasp the depth of spiritual sound. And that is one, chanting the holy name of God, and two, eating foodstuffs which have been offered to God, right? Everybody likes to eat. Everybody likes, to sing, good music, whatever the case may be. So this very basic function of our tongues and our mouths and our ears, when employed differently, brings different results. So, swayameva spuratyada, jihwado, beginning with the tongue, it begins there. We chant spiritual sound and we taste spiritual food. And this has the effect of purifying our senses and enables us to more deeply grasp or apprehend spiritual substance. Spiritual substance. So that in one sense is the foundational principle of chanting sacred sound. That it elevates our consciousness by putting us in contact with something divine, and thereby it enables us to rise consistently above the material trappings of the mind and the senses, and it gives us an opportunity for divine experience. Now, what is one way we can tell that we are rising above the trappings of the material mind and senses? That the way situations would affect us changes. Now, somebody might say, but I've been doing spiritual practice, but I find that I'm continuously getting problems. The world is becoming more stressful. And that may be a fact. I was having this discussion with somebody just a few days ago. We were speaking about the government and whatnot. I mean, if you really we were speaking specifically about the government and the education system. And I made the point to them that we were discussing something about why schools that are less run by the government tend to perform better than the schools run by the government. And I said, but the answer is in your question, because the government, they have less to do with the government rules and regulations. They're able to run the school how they want it. They don't have to toe the line, you know. And my experience is this, that the more government becomes minutely involved in the way things go on in the country, the worse it gets. Now, there are some things that they should be involved in, mind you, but the more they involve themselves, the more chaotic it becomes. One economist, Milton Friedman, he made this statement that if you put the government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in a short while, you'll have a shortage of sand, you know. So the world isn't getting any better by whatever means, by whatever means they have tried to implement. It's getting more dangerous. It's getting worse. The things we were able to enjoy even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, at the prices we were able to enjoy it at, is not the same. Pollution is having a negative effect on the planet. So many things, and this is increasing as time goes on. The peace of mind that our parents would have enjoyed, that our grandparents would have enjoyed and described so vividly to us, that isn't there anymore. And the pace at which this is happening is accelerating, which means the rate of increase every year is getting higher and higher. But the effect of mantra meditation is that even though the situation around us is becoming more chaotic, is becoming more tempestuous, we are able to deal with it better. The way we react to these situations changes. And we can notice this in ourselves over time. And I've actually noticed that in myself, that the way I would have reacted to certain situations 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 months ago, perhaps, I noticed a certain change in myself. So the way we chant or the way we recite mantras, there are 3 ways broadly. There's silent meditation, which is called manasik japa. It takes place in the mind. There's upangshu, or whispering, or slight vibration, where the lips move and some audible sound is produced, but it's not very loud. It's a whisper. And there's a vaikari. Vaikari means that we chant very audibly, loudly, that others can hear. Now, generally, when we do our own personal meditation, we do upamshu. Why? Because oftentimes when we just leave it within our mind, somehow the mind gets distracted. But when we engage another sense, which is the tongue and the mouth, the chanting, it tends to focus the mind. It helps to focus the mind, because the key thing in pronouncing the mantra is to listen carefully to the sound of the mantra that we are making. Actually, one of the most important things I could tell anybody about chanting is pay careful attention to the sound of the mantra that you are chanting currently. Why is this important? When we begin to chant, if we're chanting on beads, a set of beads generally comprises 108 pieces, with a middle one making it 109. But the middle one is not used for counting, but the other 108 are used for counting, right? But if we think or meditate, I have 108 to chant. then the mind tends to be less focused. It's focused on the end rather than the moment. One of the most important aspects of chanting japa I've found over the years is to try to focus on the sound of the mantra that we are chanting right now. Don't pay any attention to the mantras that have gone before. Don't predict or make plans for the mantras that are about to come. But focus on the sound that we are vibrating right now. And for us, we chant the Maha Mantra, which is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which has a very beautiful meaning. It's actually a direct cry to God, who is all attractive, who is a reservoir of all happiness, of all bliss. And we are asking him, please allow me to be engaged in your service. Please allow me to be sheltered by you. And so when we just focus on the sound of the mantra that we are chanting now, it helps us to be more present in the moment, to be present right now in the now, and that has immense benefit for focusing. And when we chant on beads, it has that effect of sometimes when we're trying to concentrate on something, we find ourselves fidgeting. We'll tap our fingers somewhere. We'll like if you have a pen that clicks, you find yourself clicking the pen. You find your foot fidgeting. Sometimes you find yourself cracking your knuckles, something like that. Just because we have to be occupied. The mind is so restless. It's very difficult oftentimes to remain still in the moment. So chanting on beads, it helps us to focus the consciousness. And so you find that when we chant, I'll just demonstrate on my beads here. That we oftentimes roll the beads between our hands like this. So as we're chanting, we'll say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then we just move to the next beat. But as we're rolling it, it's just a way to keep conscious and we're listening to the sound of the mantra. Another point in japa is to keep a regular count. And initially, if we don't have beads, I would say try to focus the mind for 5 minutes. Set aside 5 minutes without any sort of external distraction and bring the mind to focus and maybe set a timer and get ourselves into the frame of mind, of which I'll do an exercise with that shortly, and just begin to meditate on the sound of the mantra. And another reason why we count or keep count of our mantras is generally when something is counted, when something is observed in that way, it tends to behave differently. Like there's one saying that money counted behaves differently than money not counted. When we're very meticulous about how we utilize our resources, we tend to be more conscious of what we are doing. So similarly, when we are counting or chanting, it makes us more accountable. It gives us that sense of responsibility, that I have to complete this responsibility. It gives us that sense of duty that I owe to myself. And if you notice, everything in life we do, we generally count. If you go to the gym and you're doing weights, then you count how many reps, how many weights and how many reps you do. If you're running, many people like to check their metrics. Some people would run for half an hour and they set a timer. Some people would run, I'll run 5 kilometers today, or 3 miles, or 5 miles, as the case may be. It counts. It gives us a sense of accomplishment, that I'm goal-oriented. I'm goal-oriented. So these are some basic points. I won't go more into, because if we really want to go into the depths of japa, sometimes we have seminars that last, 5 days, 6 hours a day, just going deeper and deeper into japa, into chanting of sacred sound. But these are some basic points. One is to be focused on the mantra that we are chanting right now, this one mantra. Two, to chant audibly that you could hear. So therefore, you can actually listen to the sound of the mantra you are saying now. The other point is have a fixed vow of determination that I'll chant for 5 minutes, or I'll chant a certain number of rounds, or I'll chant one round of 108 mantras, as the case may be. And the final point I'd like to give is that not only do we have a fixed time that we listen very carefully to the sacred sound that we are pronouncing at that time, if we are doing it in our homes, try to have a fixed time that we'll do it every day and a fixed place. I find this to be very, very useful for me. In many, many circles nowadays, they speak about creating a sacred space. You know, have that space where you can go. You won't take your mobile phone. You know, you leave everything, ceremoniously at the door, on the threshold of that place. It can be a quiet spot in your garden. It can be at your home. It can be, some place in your home. And if you have, a quiet spot that you go, I know that this spot I'm going for this purpose. That tends to create an impact on the consciousness. That when I go into this place, I should be serious, I should be focused, I should be contemplative, I should be meditative. I shouldn't bring my baggage with me, but I should set it at the door and come here completely empty, allowing myself to be open to an experience I would have never had before. And if we do it at a regular time, it also helps the mind to be focused. Generally, we recommend chanting early in the morning. Why? Because the world is asleep. That chaos. And you could notice that in the morning, if you wake up early and you get some of your most important tasks done, then you find that the day seems to be longer. You have time for everything else. But when you don't get your most important tasks done in the morning, then sometimes it has the effect of everything seems to be very chaotic throughout the day. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. But when we make time early in the morning to rise and be at peace, then that impacts the day. It has an impact. How we start, it has a direct impact on how the day flows. On how the day flows. So these are just some initial thoughts on the chanting of mantra, specifically the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And what I'd like to do now is I would like to invite each of you to chant one round with me. Chant one round. I don't know if you have beads. And those of you who have beads, you can, take your beads and I'll demonstrate how we chant. If you know already, then that's very good. But I was told this was sort of like an introductory class, so I won't take leave any stone unturned, as it is said. So if you have beads, then it's 108 going all the way around, but there's a middle bead. Now you can take any side you want, not the middle bead, between your middle finger and thumb. Between your middle finger and thumb. Generally, the index finger isn't used for chanting on beads. So we take the middle finger and thumb in your right hand. And one of the important things in chanting as well, it helps when we have the proper posture. So if you are seated on the floor, then try to sit in at least a half lotus position. If you are seated on a chair, then sit, bring the back upright. Put your feet firmly, maybe at shoulders width apart. on the floor. Keep the back erect. And you sort of picture that somebody's standing just behind you and they're holding you in the middle of your head by your hair and sort of just pulling your head up slightly. So they're pulling your head up slightly. And also you feel that your body is being drawn to the center of the earth. So in other words, you're firmly situated on the surface where you are sitting, either a chair, on the floor, and you're sitting with your back erect, your shoulders relaxed. And don't completely straighten the spine, but just in the lower spine, it should be curved slightly inward. The shoulders should be drawn back so as to open up the chest to allow for the clear passage of breath in and out. And just before we begin to chant, we want to focus on our breathing. A very simple exercise. As we breathe in, we raise our shoulders towards our ear. I don't know if you could see. Let me see if I could fix my camera. As we breathe in, slow, deliberate inhalation. We bring our shoulders up to our ear. And as we breathe out, for a count of 4 mentally, we bring our shoulders back and down. Not forced, but in a very natural way. Right? We'll do this for about 4 repetitions. We breathe in. And out. And as we're breathing, just maintain that erect posture and allow our mind to become more settled by the flow of our breath in and out. And as we breathe in, bring our shoulders up. And back as we exhale. So it's almost like a rolling action of the shoulders. We'll do it 2 more times. I'm going to chant one invocation mantra, and then we'll begin to chant the Maha Mantra. If you know it, you can chant along with me. If not, you can just listen very attentively. And then we'll begin to chant the Maha Mantra together. And we're just focusing on the sound of the mantra that we are chanting. And this should take us about 7 to 10 minutes. If you finish your round before and you see others next to you still chanting, then you can continue to chant peacefully. I will keep count on my beads, and hopefully you all may go the same pace as I would be going, but go at your own pace. Don't try to chant too fast, but also don't go too slow. Listen carefully to the sound of the mantra, pronounce it very clearly, and just allow yourself to hear the sound of the mantra. It should be between 7 and 10 minutes. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. And now we begin to chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. So I don't know, is there anyone who hasn't finished their one round on beads?
Or 3% still.
Okay, let them continue. Let them continue. You could indicate to me when they're complete, right? I will continue chanting also on the mic, right?
Will do.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Excuse. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prem, are they still chanting?
One person still chanting.
Okay. Then, unfortunately, like I'd have to ask for questions now because I have to take my father to a doctor's appointment. And it's already 3:10, but I could spare some time still if anybody would like to ask any question, or we could have some discussion. If not, you could continue chanting or have kirtan as you indicated before, Prem.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone has a burning question?
I'm not so sure where it ends because I mean, if I remember the rules, there was one in the middle that would make me know when I said the gone wrong. But I don't know. In huh? whole thing is wonderful. Oh, this is like so beautiful. Thank you. Okay, what I was saying.
Okay, we covered some loose ends. Any other questions? Yeah. Lovely.
Okay, I've got a question.
Yeah, please.
What is Hare translated to?
Hare comes from the word Hara. Hara refers to Srimati Radharani, or the energy of the Lord. So when we conjugate it in terms of changing to an address, we're calling out to the energy of God. Hara becomes Hare. So the mantra is in the vocative, in that we're directly calling out. So Krishna literally translates into the reservoir of all attraction. And Rama literally translates into the reservoir of all pleasure, eternal bliss, eternal happiness, like that. And Hare is the energy of God. So in addressing the Lord, it's very complete in that we are not complete without our energy. That is there with us, inherent. So similarly, the Lord is described as Parasha Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate, that he is the abode of all energy. So this energy of the Lord is manifest in the form of Srimati Radharani, Radha, in other words. So this Hara is calling out to that energy of the Lord to allow us to be engaged in the service of the Lord. Is that okay?
Yes, it helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's H-A-R-E. H-A-R-E. Huh? H-A-R-E.
Yeah. Now in English, if you were to say H-A-R-E, it's here, which means like a rabbit, right? But in Sanskrit, is ha-re, ha-re, like that. Sometimes there's an attempt at a joke, if you ever heard of the rabbit incarnation of Krishna. And they say, here Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Can you provide another example of the vocative?
Of the vocative
Yeah, is there an example in English that you can provide, like an equivalent?
is like, for example, if I'm, what is your name?
Asha.
Pardon?
Asha.
Asha.
Yeah.
So if I'm calling out to you, then there would be a stress. Hey, Asha, Asha, that you'll know from the sound of my voice that I'm actually calling you, as opposed to if I'm speaking to somebody and I'm just talking, you know, Asha, such and such, you would know I'm not calling you. I may not even be speaking about you, know. So similarly in Sanskrit, the way it's phrased, you know it's calling out to that person. If I say Hare, it's calling out. Krishna is the vocative of Krishna also, when conjugated. Rama is also the vocative of Rama, when conjugated. So all of these three words are calling out in address. So Srila Prabhupada, our preeminent guru, he actually says that one of the moods we can chant this mantra is in the mood of a small child that is crying out for the shelter of its mother. And it's very interesting because all of the words are in the form of addressing, you know, all of the words are in the form of address, like that. And you know, like if I were to meet you sometime and I remember you, and I say, Asha, I remember you, and then you know I'm calling you, right? You know I'm calling you, you turn. When somebody calls you, they said my name, and it calls your attention, right? So in the same way, when we chant the holy name of the Lord, when we address him, it calls his attention like that. All right. Unfortunately, at this point, I'll have to go, else I'll be late for that appointment with my father. I wish you all success and I wish you good luck. And I really sincerely hope that you can at least make some time each and every day for chanting this Maha Mantra. You will not lose, and there's all to gain. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Internet was looking off my phone. You lost it. Huh?
No, we ain't lost it.
He's done.
Yes.
Okay. I was saying, send up. So we're gonna have a short kirtan now. I'm gonna get some refreshment. We are overlapping on the other speaker, so he's gonna give us 20 minutes. So in that time, I hope to get my refreshment to have that. If you want to stand and stretch while you chant, they're going to start you off, and after a couple of mantras, then you will follow. He is repeating after her. So when he sings, you sing along with him. Okay? You don't need to do this. And the words are, say after me, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And you would follow along with him, so you would, I know you will now practice it. Okay, I can do it my phone and reconnect them.
That's the mic. Roshi?
Huh?
That's the mic.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So just as Prabhu was saying, that kirtan is a call. It's like the guidance. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare You were singing very well. And
Yes, thank you for joining.
maybe if you feel some energy in the I felt
Yes.
I felt the energy, the small incredible. In Kirtan, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is hearing us. He is listening to us, for sure. I'm always very excited because I think about that Krishna felt satisfied by hearing his name. This the God, our beautiful, all attractive God is satisfied, with pleasure to hear his name. And if we speak his name with love, because Krishna is love, it's love self. Krishna loves everybody. He has no enemy. He has no friend. He loves everybody, and his desire actually to get our love that we how calls it in English he would like our
Dedication.
reciprocation. That all what he needs. That is his person. His person. And person. If we love somebody, we need that this person loves us. We need it. We wish it. We would like it. We want it. And this is if somebody loves us, me in this way, like I love you, it's happiness.
Like
Yes,
Detroit.
yes,
How would you say it
happiness.
in German?
Hmm?
How would you say it in German? This one word. Reciprocity.
Reciprocation. Reciprocation.
So, for example, is it like mutual? Mutual.
Yes. Yes. And Krishna actually he loves me, he loves you, but I'm not sure I love Krishna. Do I love Krishna? I'm not sure. I don't know who is it. I don't know how is he look. And it's actually this is the problem. This is a problem because we don't know how God is, who is he, what he is, what is his favorite dishes, favorite.
How to know him personally, all his
Yes.
likes, all the things that he likes. Yeah.
And if we could know that, we could give the Krishna pleasure and answer of his love. And for example, and if we can get him, can give him his preferred food or call his name. Simply call his name in our love's mood. And this is Krishna is pleased, and we in this moment we have happiness. We are happy because we are connected with this love, with Krishna, with God, with God Himself. This is.
Yeah, we could experience love because of Krishna, from Krishna.
So for me, it's a feeling, you know, when I get this chill, I see the love, I see the truth. When you sing, it's the higher vibration.
Yes.
A friend was saying yesterday, the first time he was calling and he got this chill. So this is the essence or the love. I don't have to know how it looks, but it's a feeling.
Yeah.
Excellent.
This higher vibration.
Exactly. This vibration.
Yeah.
Exactly. What you feel in this moment, if you chant, if you call
that
Krishna,
goosebumps, you see?
yes, Krishna, and Krishna suddenly oh, he is here, he is here, he is listening to me. And, oh, I'm happy this moment. And this is happiness, true happiness. Not that what we have in this material world, temporary and not so completely what we want. Krishna, this happiness with Krishna is true happiness. It goes never away. We will, if we get this, even for the moment, we will have it all our life. We will remember this feeling. And this feeling will help us to to search to look
Develop love and to grow.
love into Krishna and to look for Krishna. Mhm. Yeah.
So it is like in Christianity, Krishna is Christ.
Yes.
Christ-like.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Actions, reactions. Look,
Yeah, there's an explanation where the saint, he was saying that different names, but of God. There are like different wells in different villages. And if you go to a village, one village, you'll say, oh, all water is sweet. We'll go to another one and say, oh, no, all water is the best water. But all these wells, there's one river that's feeding all of the wells. And that is true unity and love. And it's God. So this is what love of God. This is where the source of everything.
Good explanation. I love that.
and this is why a number of us would have come out of religion, right? Because when you come to that understanding, it's like, I understand this. You
Yeah.
understand me. And you know, as to what is your religion, sometimes, you know, it's a question some of us cannot answer. Because really and truly, we have come out of religion because we know who it is. So, and some of us will see, that's nice. You see, you know, like in the Muslims, you will see, you know, what we call different teachers in the Muslim faith also as being Christ-like.
Mhm. Yes.
The other speaker is gonna come on in a few minutes. So you are free to stand up while he's speaking if you're tired to do. Don't fall asleep. Feel free to stand, just if you're, you don't want you falling asleep.
You could also actually say happiness is the true feeling of love, is the true feeling of Krishna.
Yeah.
And that is this vibrational.
Yeah.
If you wrote a book about vibrational healing, this is this higher vibration. When we chant, when we sing, when we talk about this right now, this that happiness.
Yeah.
Actually, all in our life, in our world, in universe, behind universe, in spiritual world, all is about the vibration. Gross vibration is our body, is our material world, material body, and vibration could be it could be they are always subtle, more subtle, and the most subtle vibration is spiritual vibration. And we are going to the spiritual vibration. We are looking for this higher vibration. Not gross is higher. We are looking for higher vibration. We will be better in our quality if we living in this higher vibration. And that's why we try to be higher, to be spiritual. And if we, in this moment, if we chant the holy name of Krishna, we are in spiritual vibration, pure spiritual vibration in this moment. And if we could stay in this statement, this vibration all our time, it would be perfect. Yeah, we couldn't because we are material. We have material bodies, and we have our needs like food, and so our body needs some other activities. And that's why we cannot stay in this position of spiritual vibration. But we should move us to this level, and that is exactly what yogis do. Actually, yogis do that exactly that. Yogi try to stay in this. They move higher. Its vibration. Their vibration. Yes, and try to stay out of material body. To take lesser attention of material body, of my desire. For example, I try to not attempt be attentive to my desire, to my needs. I try to control my tongue. It means control tongue. It means lesser eat.
Right. So
Eat not so everything what I want.
I will
Eat
that.
particular things
55 minutes.
and
I am. Okay.
not
So
speak
you are
so
hearing
much
what's going on?
and speak not everything. For example, billboards
Yeah,
or
and
gross
you can see as well what's going on, right?
vibration. So only and this is control about tongue, about stomach, what I eat, how many I eat, how much I eat, and genital too. Not to have so much sex and sexual desire. It's also control. And this three level of control is yogi's goal, actually. Tongue, mind also, mind, tongue, stomach, and genital. If yogi could control this, then it's successful. Yogi can not take so much attention of body and to be spiritual with vibration.
Okay, we any more questions for the end of the day? The next
Thank
speaker
you.
is ready.
That was nice.
And like I said, that's how it's today. You just stand.
No, it was good. Yeah.
Some of them next. Yes, right. We need to connect him back on. Whatever, Prabhu, you are on.
Okay, first of all, I want to say good morning to everyone. And Hare Krishna. So we've had a lot of information this morning and a little bit of actual practice. So my talk is supposed to be moving from karma to bhakti yoga. And right now, you have actually made that movement. So right now, the activities that you're performing is in the mood of remembering the Supreme Lord and giving some service to the Supreme Lord. First of all, by hearing, and then by chanting. So these are the two important things that are in Bhakti Yoga. So you find that when the seminar is finished and you go back to your regular activities, you go back to the activities that you normally perform, working, going to school, whatever you do. All right. And then you go back into the wheel or that slot whereby you continue to do your daily activities. However, the purpose of this movement is to make you understand how to utilize your present activities in the service of the Supreme Lord, so that you're not going to be doing anything different, but you're going to be doing it for a different reason. So all the motivation in the material world is to get ahead, to get some sense gratification, to enjoy, and to accumulate so many things. But we can enjoy in the right way, which is called Bhakti Yoga. So I want to read a little bit from it's the Srimad Bhagavatam, and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, what it states here, and these are the words of a 5-year-old boy, and that 5-year-old boy was persecuted by his father because his father was a demoniac ruler, and because of that, his father came to the point of even wanting to kill his son because his son represented something that he didn't espouse in his life. So the verse goes, it's Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smarnam Parasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. So Shravanam means hearing. So that's the first process of devotional service, Shravanam, which you've all had the good opportunity to hear in many ways. And hearing is the way by which we can actually become closer to the Supreme Lord. We can develop the idea and the consciousness of the personality of Godhead, of Krishna. So that's basically what it is. We are normally in material life, we don't have any conception of this reality of hearing about the Supreme Lord. So here we have the opportunity. And to hear about the Supreme Lord, our founder Acharya, he is called Srila Prabhupada. He has written like 80 volumes of books. The purpose of him writing these books is that he wanted to give everyone the knowledge of Krishna consciousness, the knowledge by which we can actually devote our lives to God and perfect the human form of life. So hearing is the most important. If we don't hear, we will not be able to understand. So we take our time to hear about the Lord. And once we do that, we start remembering. It's like if you read your favorite literature and you remember the activities that were mentioned in that literature. So we all growing up have read the classics, and we know what these stories are. We have even read some of the Bible, and we know what the stories in the Bible are and what the instructions in the Bible are. And in the Bible it is said, thou shalt learn to love thy God with all thy heart, with all thy strength, with all thy soul, and all thy mind. And the next thing is to love thy neighbor as thyself. So this is what is given. And the process of devotional service is to learn how to cultivate this love. Now you're going to love with your heart, your soul, your strength, and all your mind, right? So you're going to invest your entire consciousness, your entire ability in the service of the Lord, in hearing about the Lord, in thinking about the Lord. When you do that, you want to know how you can serve the Lord. So the first two is Shravanam, and then Kirtanam is what you did this morning. You chanted. You chanted in two ways. You chanted on beads, which is silent meditation, and you also chanted in the kirtan with the musical accompaniment. So these are two ways of chanting. And one is called, the chanting is, called kirtan. And the Sankirtan is the congregational chanting, which is recommended for this age of Kali. This age is a very difficult age. And according to Vedic literature, there are 4 different ages, of which Kali is the worst or the most degraded. So we're in this situation here. The advantage of that is that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us the simple method, a very simple method of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that's an extremely simple method of connecting with the Supreme. It's very, very easy. You can do it anywhere, anytime. It doesn't matter. So we always recommend the chanting of the holy names because that brings us closer to the Supreme Lord. So we have that kirtanam, the chanting. First we had the hearing. And like I was explaining yesterday, the hearing, you can do it by reading the books that are available. So by reading those books, you can begin to understand who the Supreme Lord is. Then when you start chanting and you start hearing, then you start remembering Krishna, which is called Vishnu Smaranam. So when you remember Krishna, you bring him into your consciousness. You bring him into your lives. And so by doing that, he becomes a part of your life. He becomes an integral addition to your life. Now, it's not like he's an addition. He was there all the time. But it's because we did not recognize him. We didn't recognize his presence. But by studying the scriptures, we can actually recognize how he is present in everything and in every activity, and how he's so very merciful. So that Vishnu Smarana means remembering. Now, when we remember Krishna, after we hear together with hearing and chanting and remembering, we want to do something for him. We want to serve his lotus feet. So in order to serve the lotus feet of the Lord, we have to do the activities of Bhakti Yoga. And these activities, we know it's hearing and chanting, and remembering the Lord, and performing some service. And the service can be of many different kinds. So the people there, they have cooked and they have given you nice prasad. And that is one method of service. In the Bhagavad Gita, they said, Yat Karoshi, Yad Ashnashi, Yad Jehoshi, Dadasi Yat. Yat Tapasyasi Kaunteya, Tat Kurushva Mararpanam. And it said that all that you do, all that you eat, all austerities that you perform, all these activities, you do them as a service to the Supreme Lord. So you do it in remembrance of the Lord, and you do it in a way that will please him. So in order to understand what pleases him, of course, we have to study the literature, we have to hear from those persons who are practicing. And so that's part of Sevanam, we're doing some service. When we do the service, what happens is we get the mercy of the Lord. So like in the temples, you find that there's the gathering on Sundays, that's the open house where everyone comes in, and they have the nice kirtan, they worship the deities on the altar, and then there is a nice feast. But then after the feast, there's a big cleanup, and there are these persons who are washing the pots. So even by washing the pots of the Lord, what happens is we are engaging in service. Just like we engage in service when we chant, when we hear these discourses, when we study the scriptures, when we read about Krishna, just by doing these services. And there are many different types of services. So some people have different abilities and they can do administrative services. So all these things can be utilized in the service of Krishna to spread this movement, to inform others about Krishna consciousness. So this is basically what that is. That's the service. And then Archanam means to worship the Lord. And this comes, basically what happens is when people come to this movement and they accept a spiritual master, they become initiated, first initiated. And then after they begin to practice for a full year, they become second initiated. And that's when they're trained how to worship the Lord. So that is Archanam. And then there's Vandanam, which is offering prayers. So when we are grateful to the Supreme Lord, we offer prayers. There's a tendency for people to pray when they want something. But if we pray to the Lord, glorifying his presence and glorifying his protecting us, and not only protecting us, but taking us into his loving embrace. It's not just protection from the material world, but it's giving us that loving, peaceful situation. So he's taking us into his loving embrace. And that is called Vandanam, offering prayers. So we naturally want to praise people who we are fond of, who we respect. And so this comes natural. We learn about the Lord. We have that great respect for the Lord. We want to please him. We want to offer some kind of glorification. And these are the prayers that we offer. So then while we are doing that, now it comes to the point of dasyam, which is becoming the servant. So now we are so ingrained in this devotional activity that we consider ourselves to be inmates of the process of devotional service. And we want to learn how to serve the Lord. Just like I was mentioning yesterday, that if the person has a good relationship with his parent, then what happens is he tries to please the parent. And the parent being pleased, then make sure that he has everything he needs. And then there's that loving bond that comes up there. So by doing these services, we become the servant of the Supreme Lord. And by becoming the servant, we are in our rightful position. Now, no one wants to become a servant. Everyone wants to be a master. But this becoming a servant is actually becoming master of your senses, being able to become free from materialism, not being disturbed by happiness and distress. This is what this being a servant is. Now, the Supreme Lord is such a benevolent dictator that what he does is he cares for everyone. So everyone feels comfortable in his embrace. Anywhere in the world, people take shelter of the Lord in times of difficulty. But what we want to do is not only in difficulty, but in happiness, take shelter of the Lord. So we're not approaching the Lord for any benediction, but we are approaching the Lord to serve him, to glorify him. And this is the process of Bhakti Yoga. And then we have Sakyam, that's becoming the friend. So then we treat the Lord as our friend. So he's our best friend because, like I was mentioning before, he stays with us no matter where we are, no matter in what consciousness we are, he always stays with us. He's there waiting for the moment when we will come back to him. So we make the Lord our best friend. And then Atmanivedanam means surrendering everything, whatever one has. So at that point in time, we're utilizing everything for the service of the Lord. So people who have children, they try to educate their children in this process. And sometimes educating doesn't mean hammer and nail teaching. It means engaging them, like giving them prasad, taking them to the center where these activities, and let them enjoy the association of people who are servants of the Lord, who want to please the Lord. So in that association, what happens? It becomes nice because you have friendly people who you deal with, and they try to help you and they try to guide you. Now, we are not saying that everyone has to strictly give up everything that he's doing and just take to this movement. What we are saying is that we have to inculcate the tenets of this movement in our life. So in that way, what happens? It changes our consciousness. We are in the world, we are performing activity, right? But we are not performing vikarma, which is unwanted activity or sinful activity. But the activity we are performing is now called akarma. This karma doesn't produce any pleasant or pious or sinful reaction in the world. It's only a spiritual activity. And because it's a spiritual activity, and that's the difference, the spiritual activity is connected with the spirit, with the Supreme Lord. The material activity is connected with the material world, our surrounding. So in this case, when we do this, we become free from the reactions of normal work. We are not anymore, we are not disturbing other people. We are not even trying to help other people up, but we are trying to give them the knowledge. And again, in the Bible, it says, let your light so shine that everyone shall see your works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Yeah, and glorify your Father who is in heaven. So you find so you find that when we act properly, when we act in the service of the Lord, everyone becomes happy with us. And when they see what we are doing, then what happens is they begin to glorify the Lord also. So this is basically the practice of devotional service. It's hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord, serving the feet, offering worship, offering prayers, becoming the servant, becoming the best friend, and then eventually surrendering everything to the Lord. So devotional service is not a very difficult thing. It's quite easy when we practice it. However, breaking away from the connection to the material situation and the hopes and aspirations in the material world, that's where the difficulty lies. But by the chanting of the holy names, like you did this morning, by the chanting and by hearing, and by hearing means reading the scriptures also, by doing this, we can inculcate in our lives the practice of devotional service. So basically, how devotees act, and you see that they're dressed in dhotis and kurtas and saris, and wearing neck beads, and this is the outer expression. The inner expression is within the heart, whereby we accept this process of bhakti yoga, which is called devotional service. It's devotion to the Supreme Lord. And it means that our lives will be completely dedicated to the Lord. So by these 9 methods of devotional service, we can understand the best things in life. Now, the symptom of pure devotional service, a pure devotee is interested only in devotional service, not in material affairs. So even though we have to maintain ourselves, even though we have to perform our daily duties, we do it in the spirit of service to the Lord. We maintain ourselves or maintain our bodies so that we will have the strength and the ability to continue in our service. Because if we remember Krishna at the time of death, what happens is we go back to the spiritual world where Krishna is and where everything is peaceful, and you always have a remembrance of Krishna. You never forget Krishna there. So this is the goal of the practice of devotional service, which is going back home, back to Godhead. So we all want to do that. We all want a peaceful situation, but the peaceful situation is only in the embrace of the loving Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so Bhakti Yoga is the means by which we can actually come to that situation and get into the embrace of the Supreme Lord. Now, once we start practicing, it means we are on the boat going back home. So there might be difficulties as we go along. There might be problems while we're on the boat. But the thing is, if we stay on the path, we will be assured of success. So we want to become successful in the practice of devotional service. But that success is not like a material achievement where we put a plaque up and say we have done this, or we expect glorification from others. That achievement is so that we become closer to the Supreme Lord and become completely peaceful and free from all kinds of suffering, all kinds of difficulty. And then we become the best well-wishers of everyone. So like again, it said, love thy neighbor as thyself, after learning to love God properly. So the practice of Bhakti Yoga is to love God, to learn how to love God. And there are many instructions. And like I say, these books are very, very easy to get. And I see everyone has cell phones. You can go to the vedabase.com. That's VEDABASE.com. And the books are there. You can read the books that are not available on the book counter here. So you can have other books that you can actually read. And this will give you the understanding and the direction to continue in Krishna consciousness. So I know this has been a very exhausting, a lot of talk regarding this Krishna consciousness and what we should do. But I know that also you have enjoyed quite a lot of it. And that enjoyment is what will bring us to the service of the Lord. When we feel that joy and that peace, that's what brings us to the service of the Lord. So I do want to stop here. And if we have questions or any comments or anything that you thought about in the meantime while you were taking your notes, you can ask, because I don't think I can have given everything in the few minutes that I spoke. So does anyone have any comments, any questions, even any disagreements? All right. I think so far everyone agrees with what I said. Is that correct? And so basically what we have to do is we have to try to inculcate this practice in our daily lives. And by doing that, we can become happy and we can spread happiness to everyone.
Thank you. I have one
So-
question.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that we can actually also review the session we had with you yesterday on YouTube. Is that correct?
Yes, it's on YouTube. So what happens is that you can go ahead and listen to it again because it's going to be saved on YouTube. And the link is Tobago Retreat 2022.
Thank
So
you.
all you have to do is go to YouTube and search for that, and you will get the 3 sessions. So you get yesterday's session. The only thing is that when Rajarshi spoke yesterday, that's the first speaker, I didn't get everything. I put it on during his talk. So part of it is missing, but the rest of it is there. And the reason is that sometimes we can't catch everything, or maybe we might want someone to hear it or see what happened. And that's why I put it on YouTube so that everyone will have access to it. It will be there until YouTube exists. So it's good that we can do something like that. Any other questions on the topics, or even outside of the topics?
I just want to find out. So whenever you're consuming anything, you ought to give praise to God first, offer it up to Him before you partake.
You're a little far away from the speaker. Can someone come to the mic, the thing, and repeat the question? Someone can repeat it for you.
Yeah.
What if someone heard it? Just go ahead and stand by the computer and tell me what it is.
Yes. The question I was asking is that whenever you're about to eat something, be it a fruit, be it anything, you need to offer it up to God first before consuming it.
It's the best thing, because then what's happening is you're rendering service to the Lord by offering Him what you have. So in that way, when He accepts it, it becomes prasad. It becomes the mercy of the Lord. That's what the meaning of the word prasad. So by doing that, we try to offer everything. So like devotees of the Lord who are very serious, they do not eat anything that is not offered to the Lord. So if you're eating a fruit, you can quite easily say the Hare Krishna mantra over it in the mood of offering it to the Lord, and it becomes prasad. So it's quite easy. Whatever you take, and basically, of course, it has to be according to the regulations. All right. So I think you know what those are. So once you offer something that will be acceptable by the Lord, then it becomes prasad. So we should try to offer everything.
So
In
touch
fact,
a bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Touch a bit on the regulations, you said.
Okay, the regulations are there no meat eating, no intoxication, And that intoxication means that devotees don't generally take coffee or tea, things like that. No illicit sex, and that means no sex outside of marriage. And basically, sex life is used to produce wonderful children. And so if we utilize it in that way, it'll please the Lord. And then no gambling, because gambling is speculation and trying to become involved in materialistic activity. We thinking that, we can win this or we can win that or we can, get this or get that. So that gambling, in fact, Srila Prabhupada mentioned to the devotees, they wanted to actually invest in the stock market. And he told them no. Of course, I'm not saying that if one is investing in the stock market, they should not do it. But he didn't approve of that kind of activity because there's too much speculation in that. There was one example of a gentleman who became celibate because he was a great gambler. And he noticed that when he was celibate, he was able to remember the cards on the table. But if we can do it for that remembrance, we can do it for remembering the Lord. So does that answer the question, or did you have something else you wanted to ask?
Great. One more thing that I wanted to say. When you die, your soul goes back to the Creator, and you can then become, your soul he can use it in another birth, and another birth.
All right. So what happens is the body is made up of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. That's the physical elements. And then mind, intelligence, and false ego. All right. So the mind, intelligence, and false ego, that is, the false ego means the association with the material body and the material world. So that mind, intelligence, false ego is the subtle body. At the time of death, the subtle body, if we are not perfect in the practice of devotional service, you take another body. If you're practicing devotional service, what happens is in the other body, you get the position where you can start from where you left off. So you don't lose anything. Anything that is performed in devotional service is never vanquished because it is of the nature of eternality. It's an eternal activity. So it's never vanquished. So we can actually, if we didn't become pure devotees and ready to enter the spiritual world, we take another birth in a better situation whereby we can actually practice and become perfect. Finally, when we become perfect in devotional service, when we remember the Supreme Lord at all times and especially at the time of death, then we can go back to the spiritual world. When we go back to the spiritual world, it's like we in the most prized place, the best place. We don't want to come back here because this material world is a place where there's birth, disease, old age, and death. And it says from the highest planet down to the lowest planet, all are places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. So with the repeated birth and death, there are the threefold miseries, the miseries that affect us in our body and mind, miseries that come from other living entities, and miseries that are coming from climatic conditions. So right now we're all familiar with the COVID, and the COVID is a bacteria. And that bacteria is a tiny little bacteria, but it's giving so much trouble. So these are the miseries. But when we go back to the spiritual world, there are none of these miseries. And that's because the only activity there is remembering, serving the Supreme Lord. So that evacuates, that eliminates all the miseries in the material world. So we don't always go back directly to the Supreme Lord, but we can go to a better situation. All right. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any other question? I'm sure that you might have thought of something as you went along. No question is a foolish question, because these questions actually bring us to the understanding of who God is and what our duty is. So none of these questions are foolish questions. But if you have questions and you didn't want to ask them now, you can always write them down and you can ask Premananda, and you can make some kind of friendship with devotees whereby you can actually get, if you don't have actual telephone contact, email contact, you can do it in that way. And you can ask these questions. So practicing devotional service is the only activity in this world that will make us happy. Everything else, the happiness will be temporary. But devotional service will give us permanent happiness because it takes us even from one lifetime to the other, and we don't lose anything. At the time of death, everything that we work for remains here. What goes with us is our eternal service, which is devotional service. So I do want to thank everyone for being so attentive and patient.
One question.
Okay.
It's basically on the karmic cycle, right? So if you intentionally did or committed an act, right, for the purpose in which you thought it was something good, but then you realize later down, you awaken, you realize now that, okay, this wasn't a good act. It was wrong in the eyes of the Lord. How now do you correct what you have done in order to prevent yourself from going through another karmic cycle?
Okay. So basically, you just don't do it again, and you practice devotional service. All right. So if you performed activities that were sinful, then you just give up sinful activities. It's like what Jesus Christ said to Mary Magdalene. He says, "Go now and sin no more." Right. So that's basically what it is. Now we can find ourselves in situations whereby we make mistakes as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
And it is said in Bhagavad Gita that even though one commits the most abominable sins, it said the verses api chet suraracharo bhajate mam ananya bhav, that says sadhu eva samantavya, which means that if he is practicing devotional service, if he's practicing, then he's considered to be a devotee. So basically what it is that you get on the boat, you're going back home on the boat. There might be some difficulties as you go along, right? But stay on the boat. And that's the only way to be assured of the actual success. So does that zero in on the question?
Yes, thank you.
All righty. Thank you for asking. All right. So if there are no more questions, I think Premananda has more on the program.
Yes, we thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
We disconnect now.
Yeah. It is connecting. They're gonna have this